Hello, BookTube. Well, the weather changed dramatically overnight. Yesterday was hot and humid here in Boston. Very much humid, a sticky kind of heat that really gets into your lungs and makes every exertion feel like 10 times harder. And overnight that changed completely. The air dried out and the heat went away. So that this morning, first thing, when I was taking the first subway out of the station for onerous early morning appointments, it was crisp and cool. It was absolutely delightful weather. And when those appointments were over, I was right at the Brattle bookshop, which is a used bookstore in downtown Boston that I dearly love. I've mentioned it a million times on this channel. I've proselytized for it a million times before I had a BookTube channel, and before there was a BookTube, and before there was a YouTube. It's a beautiful old building, and with 3 stories of used books that are just crammed in everywhere. And it also has a sale lot outside of bargain books, $1, $3, and $5, which is where I spend most of my time. If you comb those carts and those walled bookcases, if you comb through them, if you give yourself the time instead of just glancing in a hurry, you can find a lot. I have often maintained that you bring $20 for a visit to that lot and you will have books to last you forever. And you'll be able to build the core of a very good library with almost no money at all. $100 will see it done. So it's a great place to go, and I took advantage of that this morning. I tottered over there, and it was very cool, very nice weather, so I browsed to my heart's content until I started to feel guilty and wanted to come back here to see my little Frida, who's in the window. She's just staring at the world. She's not interested in looking at you. Are you baby? She's looking at them. No. No. She had that exact same posture yesterday, but yesterday it was really hot. And also rain was on and off all day yesterday, whereas today, I don't know what her excuse is. But the long and the short of it is, I got a ton of books. I got a ton of books at the Brattle, mostly in the sale lot, and I don't need them, but I was happy to find them anyway. The goal with Brattle book shopping, as with any book shopping, is to find keepers. The goal is to find books that will go on permanent shelves in my little book room, the little book room that Dante mentions. Not mine, we didn't go to school together, but where he mentions that he gets in from the day, from the grime of the day and the noise and the busyness of the day, and closes the door, and he's with his oldest friends. He's in a lined book room. Chaucer said the same thing. Everybody should have a room like that. Everyone should have a space they can go that's like that. Whether you want to get pretentious and call it an office or a den or not. But my little book room operates on a different book choosing criteria than the rest of Hyde Cottage. The rest of Hyde Cottage is sort of a working ambulant library. The books that are in my little book room are the ones that I really want to keep. They're the ones that I need. They are the equivalent of old friends. And the goal with Brattle shopping or any other kind of book shopping is to find those keepers. And the thing that I console myself with, the rationalization that I use to justify this, is that it's like waves washing in on a shore. They leave behind a little bit each time. They don't leave behind everything each time. Mostly they recede, and then they wash in again. I like to think of the keepers in that little book room as the same thing, that it takes a lot of book buying to accumulate a nucleus library of those keepers. That's what I'm telling myself anyway. So I'm not sure how many of these will fit the bill, but I'm going to show you a gigantic pile of books, up to my hip almost, for which I paid under $30. So I'm not feeling a whole lot of remorse. There aren't any books piled on the floor here at Hyde Cottage. There aren't any books that are double stacked. There aren't any double stacked books. No books that are hidden from view. No books in the bathtub or in the microwave oven, or in no books where they don't belong. So things are still fairly well controlled here, and there are wide open spaces. The top of one bookcase right over there is empty because it's exactly on level with the sill of the window, and looks nicer. When you open that window for the fresh air, you don't want books up there. If I had a true problem with books, there would be no space like that anywhere here, and there are plenty of spaces like that, because in addition to getting lots of books, I also get rid of lots of books. As I've said many times before on this channel, that is the key to indulging yourself. is to get rid of stuff too. Get rid of the stuff you don't want. Get rid of the stuff where a whim or a quirk of curiosity might have grabbed it in the first place, but now you know you're not going to want it. Get rid of those. But one way or another, we'll start off with a large number of mass market paperbacks, which I once upon a time I have ratcheted back how many mass market paperbacks I get. I've come to like trade paperbacks or hardcovers for their size, for the just more, they're less pokey than a mass market paperback. And of course, ebooks have no size. Ebooks are all sizes. Ebooks give you all the room in the world to annotate, to bookmark, and they don't take up any space at all. But recently I thought, there are some things that you see in mass market that you aren't going to see in any other format. And also, if it's a mass market that's right in front of you and you might want it right away, then get it. What difference does it make? Mass markets, thankfully, I do not suffer from macular degeneration of any kind, so mass market paperbacks are still completely readable for me. So I got a bunch of them. I started with an old Bantam classic that, there's a little schmutz on the cover. You have to worry about that at a place like the Brattle, because the sale carts are outside, and they are patronized by everybody in the world all day long. So that schmutz can accumulate. It's always easily cleanable. I leave behind the books that are not cleanable, but most of them are. Most books are physically cleanable. The only thing you can't fix is that obnoxious neon highlighting. But anyway, this is an old Bantam classic of the 2-volume set they did of the complete Sherlock Holmes. This is volume 2 in perfect condition. That hasn't been made in this brown coloring in a long time, and yet this looks perfect. I grabbed it. I think most of these things were $1. I grabbed this. I love this set, absolutely do, and I want them. I have a Bantam Classic shelf that I really like. I grabbed this even though I could not find volume 1 because, as I've mentioned before, when it comes to the Brattle, it's unlikely that someone sold this to the Brattle without also selling volume 1. That's very unlikely. So I grabbed this. I want it anyway, and if I don't find the volume 1 that somebody sold in companion to this, I will find volume 1 eventually. I have Sherlock Holmes in many editions. There was an old Baron Gould 2-volume annotated Sherlock Holmes out in the bargain lot. It's not the newest annotated Holmes that I think is in 3 volumes. It's the 2-volume one that I think I've seen Jason Harrigan show on his channel. I know that Mark Richardson has that 2-volume set. It's really, really good. Baron Gould was really good as a Holmes scholar. And it was out there in the sale lot, so I think they were $3 a piece. It would have been $6 for the whole thing, for the 2-volume set. But I don't know. I don't know. I've never really. I enjoy Sherlock Holmes a little too much to really need the pickiness of the annotated volume. So I just left them. I left them there because I often think this way when I'm out in the Brattle sale lot and I see something that's a whim. I think if the likelihood that someone who really, really wants this might see it here, when you only a little bit want it, then leave it behind for them. We shall see. I'm sure that that 2-volume annotated Baron Gould annotated Sherlock Holmes, I'm sure that it is more than $6 online. I'm positive that it is. So I left it there. But I found a bunch of other stuff. So the next thing I found is a mass market paperback of The Sword of Shannara with the the Hildebrandt Brothers cover there, that classic Hildebrandt Brothers cover that I memorized so well when I first read this thing back when it first came out. When did this first come out? 1977. Good Lord. I have a digital copy of, I think, all of Terry Brooks, or a huge chunk of it. And I was using that for a Voxer reading group. I don't have enough Voxer reading groups. I want to Voxer with all of you about all kinds of books. I want to be part of your Voxer buddy reads. I want to be part of all of them. And all the standard objections that you might come up with, almost all of them I can refute. One quick standard objection to buddy reading with me on Voxer is, well, you're a critic. You're a professional critic. And we're not critics. So not only will we not be thinking of the book the way you are, but you'll take all the fun out of it. In response to that, I would say, does it seem to you like I read without fun? If you've been watching this channel for even 2 videos, does it seem like I read without fun? I don't. That's just a false characterization of what a critic is. You might be thinking of bad critics. I'm not a bad critic. Another popular objection is, oh, you read so fast. You know, you'll be done with the book when we've all just started. I do read fast. I read an average of 150 pages an hour, and I read for several hours every day. An average of 8 hours, but usually closer to 10 or 11. I read an enormous amount and very fast, but that also implies that I'm some sort of IBM machine, right? That I won't slow down, that I won't be congenial in a group? Of course I will be. Do I strike you, again, as someone who's not congenial? No, I don't. Those are the 2 principal objections, and I think I can refute them. Third possible objection to a buddy read with me on Voxer would be, oh, well, you wouldn't be interested in this. Again, I would appeal to my video library. You have no small number of videos from me. Does it seem to you like I have narrow or pretentious tastes? No, it does not. No, it does not seem that way. The only other objection to a Voxer buddy read that I think is probably the one that applies far more often than I would like is, we just don't like you. And that's a little bit on the rough side, but there's no way that I can knock that down. But one way or another, there was a hardy group that decided to buddy read this book, and some of the comments were so much fun on that. I read that digital copy, and then I found this mass market paperback. I was looking for, I had the hardcover. I had the Science Fiction Book Club hardcover of this thing that I think I hauled on this channel. I don't think I got it more than a couple of years ago. I must have sent it away to one of you, because I don't have it anymore. I looked high and low for it. I looked for a physical copy of this just in general, and could not find it. And I found it today, right when that buddy read is over. I wonder if that's going to be true for the next book we're buddy reading. I think the next one we're doing is Gateway by Fred Pohl, which a lot of you will remember because it had in its was it a Del Rey mass market paperback? Whoever produced it, that mass market paperback of Gateway had an absolutely gorgeous, iconic science fiction cover, I think by Vincent Tafati. I think he's the artist for that cover. And it was so iconic that the science fiction masterpiece paperback run, you may have seen some of those, they're in yellow trade paperbacks. Sean Stanfast is showing some of them on his channel. They have coming out with 100 classics from science fiction with brand new cover art, some of which is quite catchy. And for the cover of their science fiction trade paperback of Gateway, it's basically an homage to that original cover. And that original cover of that mass market is out there somewhere. I wonder if I'll get that. I wonder if I'll find it after we're done. Because I have, again, an ebook of Gateway. Well, I wonder if I'll find that mass market after we're done with the read. But anyway, I found this. Very glad to have it anyway. This is the cover that I'll always associate with the book. Then this next one, part of a little ongoing project of mine, a little piece of nostalgia. I showed you Alaska by James Michener in the mass market paperback. The little tough mass market paperback with the little circular piece of artwork on the front cover. And today I found what I believe is Michener's best-selling book, Chesapeake. Also in this little mass market, perfect condition, with the little oval artwork there. So I grabbed it. For $1, I grabbed it. I think I have, again, all of Michener on ebook. But these things have a definite nostalgic element to them, and if I'm careful, I might be able to get a couple of readings more out of these mass market paperbacks. They are, after all, a kind of a perfect device, right? The mass market paperback is kind of a perfect device. It's no fault of the mass market paperback that your eyes eventually fail. The book itself is neat, cheap, self-evident to use, requires only sunlight for power. So that's my rationalization for all of these mass markets. The next one I got purely for the cover. I have this in an anthology that I have shown you already. This is the 39 Steps by John Buchan. Look at that cover. I couldn't pass it up. For $1, I couldn't pass it up. This is a Richard Hannay story, and I have the Wordsworth Classics trade paperback of all of them. This is the one that shot Buchan to fame and wealth, and eventually a peerage. But this is the one that did that. The Hannay stories, I just love them. I love them all. This is probably my favorite. Green Mantle might be it's a toss-up. It's an absolute toss-up. And it's the kind of toss-up that I have all by my lonesome because I don't think anybody reads this author anymore. 39 Steps is terrific. Probably you know it from the Hitchcock movie, but it's well worth your time as a book. And I found this cheesy old mass market paperback with the green edging there and that cover illustration. I had to grab it. Then the next one, also starred by BookTube. The other day I did a Brattle book haul. I do Brattle book hauls all the time. I go there all the time. And I have a whale of a time. I can't speak for the staff. I think I probably annoy them. But I also entertain them. And I have known some of them for 20 years or more. The owner and his wife I've known for a lot longer than that. And that means conversations. That means fun conversations. Where there is no longer any kind of sensation of employee and customer. Instead, it's just what's on your mind today. And that's a large part of the reason that I go, especially if I'm feeling crappy. You want to go where everybody knows your name. But anyway, the other day I did a Brattle book haul and I showed you a hardcover copy of Lincoln by Gore Vidal. Big, ambitious historical novel that I want to revisit. I want to revisit it. It had a mixed critical reception. Vidal himself said mixed things about it. I want to just try it on its own. And in the comments to that Brattle book haul, one of you mentioned that you should try Lincoln because you read Burr, Vidal's incredibly popular novel about Aaron Burr, and really liked it. And I found this. This is the mass market paperback edition that I first read this book in, back a million years ago. When did this come out? A Bantam book, 1973. 1974. This Bantam paperback came out in 1974, and this is back then I never bought hardcovers. I bought mass market paperbacks, and back then things like this came out as mass market paperbacks. They don't anymore. But imagine finding it like this in absolutely perfect condition. I mean, this is just the same as when it was made 50 years ago. So I grabbed it for $1. I bet you would have too. Then this next one, I've never read it before. I know about the author and I know about the series. This is Pan Books from the UK. They did a series of little paperbacks on great British battles. And I wish I had the whole series. Really do. This is the Somme. This is their volume on the Somme by A.H. Farrar Hockley, who was, in addition to being a military historian, also a military man. He was a man of war. He led a life in active combat, in active military service, and also wrote about it. And you don't find that combination as often as you might think. Plus I love the presentation of this thing here. I saw it and thought, how many books do you have on the Somme? How many books have you read on the Somme? Do you need another book? And then I thought, it's a mass market paperback. It's not going to take up much room. It's $1. And I've never read it. And this guy will have insights. He will have walked the ground. He will know things through long training and experience that, no offense intended to them, an armchair historian won't know. And plus, I love reading about the Somme. This is if we're talking in terms of the OGBG, you know, if Jason Harrigan is Waterloo, then this is probably my Waterloo. And let's not even ask what Mark Richardson's what his battle would be. Something up in the mountains of Vermont in the war that matters, or maybe not. Maybe we'll be getting to his war or one particular engagement in his war a little later on in this interminable mail haul. So the next one is the last mass market paperback, science fiction. This is Darfstellar and Other Stories by Walter Miller. With the little Chatterton knockoff on the cover there. And this is a collection of the science fiction short stories by the author of A Canticle for Leibowitz, which is widely regarded as one of the great, including by yours truly, as one of the greatest science fiction novels ever written. Before he wrote that novel, and before he started constantly promising another novel, and before he became, once that happened, that bolt from the blue, and once everybody started reading that book in and out of the genre and realizing it was a masterpiece, he, in large part, abandoned the short story writing that he had been doing up until that point. he had made his bones, as it were, as a short story writer in science fiction. And I have never seen a collection of his short stories before. I have Canticle for Leibowitz in a couple of different editions, but never seen this before. I've read some of these stories. I'm sure there's one story by him called The Lineman that's got to be in here, and that I really like. In fact, I like it better than Darfstellar, which you're not supposed to. Yeah, The Lineman is in here. I, Dreamer, Vengeance of Nikolai, The Will. I will be very interested in reading these things, just to add to the science fiction shelf. And, science fiction, older science fiction, is a perfect example of what I'm talking about when I say some things that came out in mass market paperbacks you're never going to see in any other format. Unless you can find them electronically, you're never going to find them in any other way. Who's going to reprint them? One way or another, we'll move on to one of my favorite authors. Of course, that's John Steinbeck. No, you haven't slipped into an alternate reality. I don't largely love Steinbeck. I don't largely love him. I think The Pearl is drastically overrated. I think The Red Pony is drastically overdone. I think Of Mice and Men is drastically overdone, drastically overrated. I got that beautiful Viking Penguin reissue in hardcover of The Grapes of Wrath a while ago, years ago, but still, I think when I had this channel, I think I hauled it on this channel back in 2016 or 2017 from the Brattle. I don't have it anymore. I got rid of it to one of you. I mailed it to one of you. I think I remember who it was. But I reread it. When I got that beautiful Viking hardcover, I reread Grapes of Wrath, and I admit there was movement of the needle. I liked it more than I had ever before. I don't think that's going to apply to the shorter fiction of Steinbeck, but I have the beautiful Penguin Deluxe volume, Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition, that anthologizes 6 of his short novels. So I have the chance there. It's there, and it's possible for me to do. And I could come across that Viking hardcover again. The Brattle will provide. Or, for instance, mass market paperback of The Grapes of Wrath. If it had the right cover, if it had the cover that I remember, then I might grab it. And I've made no secret of the fact on this channel that I love this author's book about King Arthur. And here's something that I've only read in excerpt. A Steinbeck book that I've only read in excerpt. Reading it straight through will be a new experience. This is called Once There Was a War. This is the Penguin, these olive-spined covers. And this is a collection of his nonfiction dispatches from World War II, where he would, write up the regimental goat, the mascot, or profile something or other. There was money to be made for writers to go and do that sort of thing. And Steinbeck did. And here's this book. I don't think I've ever seen this before. I think I knew that it existed, and I've read a couple of these things. But not the whole book. I know that it wasn't fashioned to be read front to back as a book, but it's tiny. So that's probably how I'll read it, and we'll see if that changes the experience at all. And then another paperback here is a murder mystery. One that I've read before. I read it in a discarded trade paperback exactly like this, and quite liked it. It's a debut, and I quite liked it. So I thought, okay, well, I got rid of it right away. I got rid of that paperback right away. I think it was either in my next sale to... Oh, no, I donated it to a friend. I have a friend who runs a church here in Boston. I donated it to his ongoing charity. I gave him a couple of boxes of books for his charity event. So I didn't have it. And then after a while, it stuck with me. I kept remembering it. So I thought, okay, maybe I want a copy of this. Maybe I wanted maybe a hardcover copy of this. So I set someone in motion to get it for me. And they did, and the hardcover was ugly. The hardcover was incredibly hideous. The cover for the trade paperback was completely different. So I tactfully got rid of it without mentioning it to that dog's body and just waited. I figured I'll see that trade paperback again. And I did today. This is Connor Fitzgerald, The Dogs of Rome. This is the first Commissario Alec Bloom novel. Despite his last name Bloom, he is working as a policeman in Italy. This is the cover that I loved, not only because I think it's really well designed, not just the picture, but the lettering as well, the font. But also because it naturally reminds me of the times that I have been in Rome. When I traveled, I had a group of dogs that I traveled with, but everywhere we went, where we were going to stay for any length of time, I also gathered up any stray dogs that I could find. The stray dogs that are always, at the time, years and years ago, were always down an alley from the port, or right at the port, or in a public square, wary of humans, don't want to get too close, but want to scrounge food. And I would often collect those dogs and make a very bitter bargain with them, I would say. I can't make you mine. You shouldn't have to live this way, and I can't change it. I can't make you mine. I can't bring you all back with me. But for the time that we know each other, I can give you everything that you should have. Comfort, shelter from the elements, as much food as you want, as much fresh water as you want, all the affection in the world, and a day, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks with me. Not just anybody, but with me. I can give you that, and at least you'll have had it. And then we'll say our goodbyes. Then we have to say goodbye. And I did that a couple of different times in Rome. And so the cover has an appeal to me. I didn't want to sacrifice the cover when I knew the Brattle would provide. And it did. But I also really like the story. The story is very gritty. It's a very good police procedural detective series. I gather this is the only one I've read. I hesitate to even look up to see. If Connor Fitzgerald has continued to write Commissario Bloom novels, then God knows how many there are by now. There are probably quite a few of them, and they're probably quite good. This is the only one I've read, and now I have it. This is the one I know I want, and then maybe the person who sold this might have gotten some of those others. Maybe they will turn up. Then the next paperback here is something I've had before, and it's a kind of writing that I'm not the world's biggest fan of. I just admit I love these books. This is Black Lizard. These are the big book of, you may have seen the big book of the pulps, or the big book of Christmas stories, or I myself have quite a few of these things. The big book of ghost stories, the big book of Sherlock Holmes, the big book of Jack the Ripper, the big book of science fiction. I have quite a few of these things, and I dearly love them. I do. I dearly love them. They're printed in double columns, and the editorial choices are usually superb. And I found one today for $1. I wasn't going to pass it up. This is the big book of Locked Room Mysteries, edited by the great Otto Penzler. And this is, who have we got here? Stephen King, Dashiell Hammett, Lawrence Block, Agatha Christie, Simenon, Dorothy Sayers, P.G. Woodhouse, Earl Stanley Gardner, and many, many more. I love these things. These just great, big, floppy trade paperbacks. I think I have this as an electronic version. I put out a call over a year ago for ebooks in the midst of the pandemic, when I couldn't go to bookstores, and when all of my reviewing work was suddenly shifting to exclusively electronic. I put out the call. You feel free to send me your ebooks. Feel free to do that. Because I loved reading ebooks anyway. I love reading them on my iPad. And I have, from time to time, loved reading them on my Kindle as well. And a lot of you have been very generous over the months. So I think I have this as an electronic version. But what fun it would be to have a whole shelf of these things. Locked Room Mysteries always strike me as pretty long on gimmick and short on talent, but a lot of the stories in here I will not have read, and it'll just join the list of big books that I have on the subject. I can't get enough of them. I think there's another one coming out in July, I believe. Golden Age of Murder Mysteries, something like that. I'll have to check and see. But then we'll do, what do we do next here? Let's do the last of the paperbacks. We'll do the last. This is another trade paperback. Then we'll move on. We'll finish up with the hardcovers. This is by Donald Hickey. This is from 1990. 1990. This is from 1990. This is the War of 1812. In a neat little trade paperback. I've seen this in hardcovers. Seen trade paperbacks, and I always sort of say, well, no, George Doggin, a historian named George Doggin, wrote a book called 1812, The Navy's War, that is tremendously good. It's much more recent than this, and it's just fantastic, and I love it so much. I love Doggin's work. He also wrote a book called To If by Sea that's also fantastic. I love it so much that I started thinking weird thoughts. I started thinking, well, okay, if you love those things and you don't need anything else, when I have a whole shelf of books on World War II, 2 shelves. I have a whole shelf of books on the American Civil War, a whole shelf of books on the American Revolution. I can't have 2 on the War of 1812. So I got this. Since it was $1, I of course grabbed this. It's in perfect condition, and it very much will be worth a reread. And I mentioned that for Jason Harrigan it's Waterloo, and for me it might be the Somme, and it could be that for Mark Richardson it's that right there on the cover. None of you are going to recognize what that is. Well, Mark will recognize what that is. There is the painting. That is the USS Constitution, utterly destroying de la Guerrière. Utterly destroying a French ship of the line. In a naval, I mean, you can see right away, that's another ship. That's the Guerrière. you'll notice no mass, no sales, no nothing. The engagement between between Old Ironsides and the La Guerriere is the stuff of naval history legend. Just it's an amazing battle to go through, minute by minute, maneuver by maneuver. In fact, I did that once upon a time. I think I told this story on this channel before, but then again, what story haven't I told before? When I worked in a bookstore in downtown Boston, I worked in a retail bookstore. I know it doesn't sound particularly believable, but it was nevertheless true. And one of the reasons why it was believable is because I didn't do a whole lot of work in the sense that you would understand it in a normal bookstore retail fashion. I mainly did what I wanted. I mainly floated around, made fun of managers, teased the hired help and whatnot, and schmoozed with the customers. Oh my, it was my favorite thing to do. It was why I was there, was to talk with the customers. Not just at the information desk, but my information desk from noon to 2 when we had our lunch rush, but also all the rest of the time. I would just wander around the store. I'd find two people shopping in an aisle and say, "What are you doing? Tell me what you're doing. What are you looking for? Why'd you pick this? Let's talk about it." And once the customers realized that I wasn't trying to hard sell, that I wasn't trying to upsell them something, that I just was butting in their business, they loved it. And apparently I give off that kind of a vibe because I don't get a negative reaction when I intrude on people like that. I really don't. I've often called it just another canine thing. Somehow or other, people just seem to get the sensation that oh, this is going to be fun, instead of who the hell is this guy, one way or another. Every once in a while at that store, something work-related would come up, and I would say, "Oh, I'll do that." And you could see the managers be surprised. You could see them say, "What? What? You're going to be useful?" I think I had a couple of managers who were actually cheeky enough to say that. "What? You decided to be useful?" Well, one time, a corporate client bought a whole bunch of 3 boxes of books, and what we needed was for somebody to put those on a V-cart, on a wheeled lorry, a little one-person wheeled lorry, wheel it out the front door once it was paid for, wheel it to the office location of the buyer, and drop it off to them. And I don't know whether it's because the manager at the time wanted me out of his hair for a few minutes, or whether maybe the staff voted to get me out of their hair for a few minutes, but I was perfectly happy to do it. So I did. Went to one of Boston's many glass and steel high-rise office complexes, and it was like on the 50th floor or something like that. It's the kind of world that I never walk into. I never experienced that world, and I never have. There are people that experience that world and nothing else, and it's their whole world. And I have never done it, except in little isolated glances like the one I had. So I wheeled those books over there, chatted with the receptionist for, I think, 20 minutes down in the lobby, and then took the elevator up and delivered the books to a corner office, literally a corner office overlooking Boston Harbor. Just gorgeous. Of course, the desk was in the middle of the room and the chair was facing the desk, away from the window, away from the view. And I didn't know the guy who bought the books, and he thought he should make some small talk and said, "So what's going on at the bookstore? What's hot at the bookstore?" And I started talking about books, and I do that fairly engagingly, and he immediately sensed that oh, I can talk books with this guy. So we started talking about books. And at one point I said, well, maybe I should be concentrating on the new history titles, considering your office decor. And he said, "What do you mean?" And I pointed to an enormous painting on the wall of Old Ironsides demolishing the Guerriere. And he said, "Oh, that was there when I got here. Is it American? I don't know. I don't know anything about it. It's got a little plaque at the bottom. I never bothered to read it." So I told him what it was, this amazing naval victory for the United States. And then, using staplers and paperclip holders and whatnot, I acted it out on his desktop. And he had people coming in. He was telling people, "Come in and look at this." We had the whole room was full of people looking at the reenactment of this. But anyway, there's more to the War of 1812 than just that. So I'm very happy to have this. It was for a long time the absolutely seminal work on the subject. So I'm glad to have it again. Then we'll do the hardcovers, and then eventually we'll finish this long baton death march of a Brattle book haul. The next one is Andre Malraux. Marroy. Marroy. There's a thing you do with the R in the middle there. I'm just not up for it this early in the morning. But this is the guy. And this is The Art of Writing, which is, somebody put a nice plastic dust jacket on it for the, library style dust jacket on it. So it's in perfect condition. And The Art of Writing is only the first part of this book. It's only the first essay. All the rest of it is this author, Marroy. All the rest of it is his assessment of canonical authors, which is the reason that I got it. His bloviations about the art of writing I can live without. But this has, who does he consider? Voltaire, Rousseau, Stendhal, Balzac, Flaubert, Proust, Goethe, Leopardi, Tolstoy, Chekhov, Gogol, and Turgenev. So, he does the Russians, but he does the great French writers as well, including Proust. I need all the help I can get on Proust, because Proust-tober is a thing in the future. It is coming up. It's not coming up right away. You still have time to prepare yourself psychologically and even spiritually. But it is coming up, when I am going to read Remembrance of Things Past by Marcel Proust. And you're all going to read it with me. So Proust-tober is coming up. So in the meantime, I until I can find, I was looking today for, I'm going to read the Moncrief translation again. I was looking for that today in a box set of some kind or other. Couldn't find it. Wasn't there today. There was no Proust at the Brattle today. But it will show up, and if it doesn't show up, I can get it from the library. I'm assuming that by October, the library will be fully functional, unless, God forbid, in October this country is in the midst of the Delta variant of COVID-19, which is making everyone sick all over again. God forbid. I don't want that to be true. I was all in favor, when COVID-19 broke in this country, I was all in favor of the strictest societal shutdown imaginable. Close the restaurants, close the airlines, close the cruise ships, close the businesses, wear a mask, socially distance. But the main reason I was that is because the COVID-19 targeted the elderly, it targeted the immunocompromised, it targeted the weakest people, the people who might die, and of course, many, 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 many thousands of them did. The Delta variant seems to be targeting young people. And although there are hospital admissions, the figures that I have seen don't show skyrocketing mortality. It doesn't look like it kills young people. It looks like it just gives them a really bad 3 weeks. And if that's the case, if the Delta variant of COVID-19 doesn't target the elderly and the immunocompromised, if it somehow gives them a pass, then I really don't want society to close down again for the Delta variant. If the worst case scenario, of course, would be that the Delta variant is just as dangerous to all of the vulnerable groups, it's dangerous to lots of other people too. In that case, who knows what it'll be like in October. I try not to think about it. But one way or another, either by then the Brattle will provide, or I will get it from the library. I can always just go and pick it up, right, with a face mask on. Or get it from, I belong to a couple of other libraries here that probably can do a curbside pickup or something like that. One way or another, I could even get it online. In between then and now, instead, I'm waiting for the books. I'll read them in October. In between then and now, I'm reading about this author. I have a million books like this, where authors write about different authors. I have a million of them. And virtually everyone takes a crack at Proust, so I will definitely start with that. But I'm interested to know, I'm a big fan of Leopardi, a huge fan, and I'm curious to know what this author has to say on it. I don't think I've ever read it. Then we can do some history. This is a book that I've had before here. I think I got it from the publisher. Did I? No, I didn't get it from the publisher, but I've had it before. This is Saul Friedlander, Nazi Germany and the Jews. This is volume 1, covering the same years as the Hitler years that we saw yesterday, 1933 to 1939. And Friedlander is a standard author. He is also wrote a book about Proust that now I wish I'd saved. I sent it to one of you. I sent it to a Proust fan. But he wrote Proustian Uncertainties or something like that, much later than this. He wrote a slim volume on Proust that I wish I had now. But this is an important work, a work to have on a shelf of World War II history as big as mine. This next one is one that will be familiar to all of you. I have had this a million times, and I realized the other day, to my horror, that I didn't have a copy. I went looking for it for one particular reason. I was just going to read one little sliver that had a bearing on a review that I was writing. And then I was sort of pleasantly anticipating that I would read that little sliver, and then I would pleasantly fall into reading a lot more. And then I realized very unpleasantly that I didn't have a copy. So I found a copy today for $1 and grabbed it. This is The Proud Tower by Barbara Tuchman. This is her look at, this is a book club edition, so it just has the Edgar Allan Poe quote on the back from which the title comes. But this is her personality-driven study of the years leading up to the beginning of World War I. So a lot of the same time period as Dreadnought by Massey, which is the book that I ended up going to when I couldn't find this one, and I needed something. I needed a little bit of foregrounding on something for a review. But the minute I saw that, I thought, okay, well, make a mental note. The Brattle will certainly provide, and when it does, remember, you don't have a copy of The Proud Tower. And this author, I love The Guns of August, I love The Proud Tower, and I love A Distant Mirror. So I will not be letting this go. I will not be letting this go. I will hold on to this. Maybe even read it really slowly and annotate it like I did with Wolf Hall and like I'm doing now with Terrible Swift Sword by Bruce Catton. Maybe I'll do that. This next one is Swap for aesthetic reasons. I just hauled it not long ago. I think it was in 2021. But I found the aesthetic form that I want. I know, I say I don't collect books, but nevertheless, if a thing's $1, then I can finesse. And it's this. It's Paul Creswick's Robin Hood book, Robin Hood and His Adventures, illustrated by N.C. Wyeth. N.C. Wyeth does illustrations all throughout here of the adventures of Robin Hood and his band of merry men. Let's see, what is this one? There's Maid Marian. Look at the light in there. Look at the sunlight, how beautifully that's done. Let's get you one more. This is going to strike a lot of you as familiar. You're going to say, wait a minute, didn't you just haul this? Pilgrimage Through the Woods there, in the dark of the English woods. And I did get this. I got this, I think, at the Brattle. I found a Reader's Digest hardcover. Reader's Digest did reprints of canonical classics and great beloved works. This Creswick's book was beloved for a long time. They did a lot of those, and I found one that was the Creswick book with the Wyeth illustrations. So I grabbed it. But I don't have, Olive at A Book Olive has a huge collection of Reader's Digest editions. I only have a couple of them. Whereas I have a lot of these Scribner illustrated with the lines along the spine like that. I have a lot of those. And I want them all. And so I saw this, I thought, oh, well, just grab it, and you can find a recipient for your Reader's Digest version, but this is the one you want. Because I'm slowly but surely, steadily building a shelf of these Scribner editions. And this is the one that I want, and I love this book anyway. I love the pure sunlight of Creswick's writing on the Robin Hood stories. Even though I read Richard Kruger's novel, Nottingham, The Sheriff of Nottingham. And I cannot recommend that book strongly enough. And it's all about the Sheriff of Nottingham, and you'll never look at Robin Hood stories the same way again. Never. And you'll have read one of the greatest historical novels that you'll ever read. So even though that's true, and even though this came out a century before The Sheriff of Nottingham, and in here the Sheriff of Nottingham is very much a villain, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I have room for both of them. And then the last one is a whopper. It's a gigantic scholarly biography of Samuel Richardson. Look at that, huh? This was Oxford University Press. These authors decided to write what they wanted to be the definitive scholarly biography of the author of Pamela and Clarissa. And I've never read this. It's been, again, I have found it in all sorts of books in the bibliography section. I found it all sorts of things, books about Fielding, especially books about Dr. Johnson. But I haven't read this book itself. I never thought I would find it. I think this was $3. I never thought I'd find it at all, much less for sale in the Brattle bargain lot. Richardson is a he was mainly a printer. He only started writing fiction when he was very late in life, or 50, something like that. For most of his life, he was a very active and very prosperous printer. Took chances, sometimes skirted the line that might have got him in real trouble with the law, and had a fairly good ear for books that would really fly. And so he made a pile of money at it. When he first started thinking about writing fiction, the people that originally saw those novels thought, oh, Richardson the printer. And if you talked to those people, even after Clarissa came out, they would have said, oh, Richardson the printer wrote a novel. And the novel itself was really strange. Richardson was an odd figure. He was very self-effacing, very plain, very friendly, almost humble for a writer. And when he was conceiving Clarissa, which is a famously enormous book, Penguin Classics actually makes a paperback of it. When he was writing it, he was constantly imploring friends, well, I want to send you a chunk of this new book I'm working on, but the main thing I want you to help me do is make it shorter. Make it shorter, please. And no one was willing to do it. No one that he sent it to was willing to do it. They all said the same thing. No, I want more of this. I don't want less. I'm not going to tell you to cut this. I want you to add to it. But one way or another, I'm not sure if this will be dry. It might end up being dry, but I couldn't pass it up. So there you go. At long last, that was my Brattle haul for today. Can we do a Steve period? We have a biography of Samuel Richardson. We have Creswick's Robin Hood and His Adventures. We have The Proud Tower by Barbara Tuchman. We have Nazi Germany and the Jews, Volume 1. We have The Art of Writing. We have The War of 1812. We have the big book of locked room mysteries. Can you figure it out? Can you figure out how it happened? We have The Dogs of Rome by Connor Fitzgerald, who's written probably who knows how many other books in this series. We have Once There Was a War by John Steinbeck. Darfsfelter by Walter Miller, the author of Canticle for Leibowitz. The Psalm, a British history of the Psalm that I've never read. Burr by Gore Vidal, a historical novel about Aaron Burr, who slew Alexander Hamilton. The 39 Steps by John Buchan with a great cover. Chesapeake by James Michener, also with a great cover. The Sword of Shannara, too late for my reading group, but I still want it, and I want that copy. And finally, the Bantam Sherlock Holmes, Volume 2, in perfect condition, just waiting for Volume 1. So there you go. That is a very long Brattle haul. Very sorry for the length of the video. I will shut up now at long last, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.